And whenever you want to begin, go for it.
All right, so I'm going to step in and chair this meeting, and our first item is for someone to make a motion that we suspend the rules to enable us to meet virtually.
I move.
So moved. So moved,
Yeah.
Barbara.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
And so the other thing is anything we have to vote on. Do we have to do a roll call? That's what we do at council.
Yeah, we do have to do a roll call for virtual.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I guess I'll do the roll call just to make sure everybody gets the vote in. So just to make it efficient for the suspension of rules.
Okay, thank you.
We'll start with Barbara, since you made the motion.
Yes.
Okay. Alderman Williams, since you were second.
Yeah.
Okay. Alderman Ravel.
Yes.
And Alex.
Yes.
All right.
Okay. And I need to announce that this meeting is being recorded. And then I think we're ready to plunge into our agenda. And the first item of business is approval of the minutes of our February 26th meeting. Does anyone have any corrections or comments, or are we ready for a motion on that?
I move approval.
Second.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions? Comments? Okay, then Marcos, I think we're ready for a roll call on approval of the minutes of February 26th.
All right. Alderman Nguyen.
Aye.
Barbara.
Aye.
Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
And Alex.
Aye.
All right, so the approval of the minutes by a 4-0 vote. And now, do you want to show us can we see on the screen what our first item of business is? Okay. So this is, oops. This is amending the city code to change portions of Oak Avenue from 12-hour parking to 4-hour parking. Staff recommends amending various sections of the city code to change Oak Avenue from Church Street to the alley north from 12-hour parking to 4-hour parking. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So are there questions, or staff, do you want to share any thoughts about this item?
Sure. I just wanted to take a minute and explain. Mike Rivera, interim parking manager. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take a minute to explain that this block, the 1700 block of Oak Street, consists of the block from Church North to the alley right where 1800 Oak comes in, the Oak Alley. And the new building just recently opened at 1727 Oak, and it's going to be a residential building, and there's going to be many folks that are going to be visiting the building for services, as well as visiting the residents of the building, along with the building that was opened over a year ago at 1717 Ridge Avenue. Currently, the block is utilized for 12-hour parking, and some of the employees of the downtown area park the block, and they don't move vehicles all day long because they park for a duration anywhere from 8 to 12 hours. So given the fact that we have, it's a block away from the Maple parking garage, and we offer a discounted parking for employees at the Maple parking garage at $60 a month, we felt that it would be a better option to have 4-hour parking or less on this block to create turnovers for the folks that would be patronizing the new buildings in the vicinity.
Okay. Yes, Alderman Nguyen?
Yes. Thank you, Mike. That's helpful to understand. Approximately, and it may be in the memo, and I didn't catch it. How many spaces will this be?
It's approximately 52 spaces on that block.
Okay.
And the current rate is 50 cents an hour. So a regular, someone utilizing the parking spaces for an 8-hour shift every day, paying 50 cents an hour, would pay approximately $80 a month if they work, Monday through Friday, versus parking in our Maple parking garage for the Evanston downtown employee discount at $60 an hour. So given the fact that we have availability at the Maple garage and the rate would be far less than parking on the street, we felt that it was a good fit to try to make the reduction of the 12-hour spaces and try to create more turnover.
Yeah, well, I think it makes sense because there will be people who will be coming to visit the residents in those places, and they will be. I don't think the new buildings have enough parking for visitor parking. So I think that makes.
Correct. And this block, I believe, also does allow for overnight parking, which most of the core downtown has a ban on overnight parking, either from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. or 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. So this particular block does not allow that. So someone who is definitely visiting that block, or somebody who has a second car and would park it in front overnight, they would be able to do so as well.
Okay. Can we flyer the cars that are parked there now for a period of time so that we can redirect these folks and let them know that, what's coming, and that they don't get surprised all in one day, so that they can make some plans and take advantage of our lower rate in the.
Yes, we can definitely flyer the vehicles. We can come up with an info flyer letting them know what's going to happen on the block, and we could also make it inclusive of what the rates are at Maple Parking Garage and who to contact for that monthly membership there.
I think that's good. We should, I don't know what your policy is with flyering, but obviously do it in one. You won't catch everybody if you just do it once. So I think doing it multiple times so that you really do are able to get everybody. Is it currently being part?
That was my question too. I'm wondering right now if it's being used since fewer people are working downtown.
It actually is being utilized on a daily basis, and now it's being utilized pretty much every day, all day, because of the construction of the building just on the northern. It would be, I guess, the 1800 block of Ridge Avenue. So with the building going up now, the contractors that are working at that site are parking there for the duration of the day. So it is being parked up every day.
So do we have a plan with them, Marcos, for where their construction workers will park after we do this?
We typically offer the contractors that are working in downtown the same $60 discounted rate at Maple Parking Garage.
Okay.
So, and we offer that to just about all the business owners and anybody who's working in the core downtown area.
Okay, because this is going to be a big surprise for them as well.
It may be, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I am for this. A good actually provide visitor parking for all of those buildings.
Right, yeah.
And also there's the corner building, the old Shan Morahan building, has a lot that's a lot of medical offices in there. So this also provides some parking for that too.
Correct.
Okay, any other comments or questions about this? Okay, so did we have a motion on this yet? I can't remember.
We did.
Yes.
We did.
Okay, so then we're ready to take a vote. If we could have a roll call, please.
Sure. Alderman Nguyen,
Aye.
Alex,
Aye.
Alderman Ravel,
Aye.
and Barbara.
Aye.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So now we're ready to talk about amending the city code section 10-11-12, the parking meter zones, to add 10 short-term parking spaces on Davis Street west of Maple Avenue.
I move approval.
Okay, and is there a second? Barbara, you want to second that for us?
Sure. Do we go through that before we talk about it?
Yeah,
Yes.
that gets it out for discussion. So now, once again, we'll turn to staff to give us a little background, please.
Hello. So these spaces would be on the south side of Davis Street between 1000 Davis and 1014 Davis. So those would stretch along from in front of Benison's Bakery, Lemoy Hardware Store, and in front of a former music store that is going to be converted into a Montessori school. So with the addition of the school coming, they're going to have over 50 students there a day that are going to be picked up and dropped off at different hours of the day. And then there's the business type of Benison and Lemoy that is very transient and short-term parkers, along with the GGO's Pizzeria, the Pantry Mini Mart, Kitty Corner, as well as the Currency Exchange. So having these spaces here would create a greater turnover, and it would be a short-term parking. Perhaps 30 minutes is what they're going to be.
Mark, Michael, have we talked to other businesses on Davis Street to make sure they are aware of this and have had an opportunity?
Yes, I have personally spoken with Ralph Lemoy from Lemoy Hardware Store, and he actually has been asking me for this for probably the better of a year. And then the individual that is preparing for the Montessori school has also asked for this as part of his development plan. And then the Benison's Bakery is also aware that we would like to create extra short-term spaces there. So those three businesses that would be directly in front of the spaces are all definitely on board with it.
I think actually this is a very good idea. I'm a regular customer of Lemoy, and it's carrying something out that's a little bit heavy, so it makes sense to have short-term parking there. And obviously for this new Montessori nursery school, parents will want to be as close as possible. But I also, my daughter Bette is on that block, and those are usually longer visits. Good to have a mixture there.
Correct. And this kind of falls in well to something new that we were exploring for 2020, and that was we have an array of just short-term 20-minute meters just sprinkled all over town, where we left some of the old single space meters and some of the pay station zones now, and those are identified as short-term parking. But they're very hodgepodge, and they're not uniformed in any way on the blocks. So what we were looking was to create more short-term parking zones in blocks that have high turnover and transient business types. So this is a good test to instead of having one short-term meter, have a block. We're trying to explore where we can create more short-term parking in block, in clusters of 3 or 4 or 5 within natural borders. So there's not really a natural border here, but there would be a cluster of 10-meter spaces where we'd have better signage delineating the short-term versus the 2-hour parking, and it would be maybe a different color, red and white or something to that effect, so that people can definitely know that this is a short-term parking limit, and they would have to remove their vehicle within the 20 minutes of them being parked there.
And there's nothing worse than just the parking space and pulling in and then seeing that it's actually a short-term meter. So I think that's right. And then people will know where they are, or remember where they are, and so that improves. I think it's a better customer experience for everybody all the way around.
Correct.
Yeah, and it does seem like it's a block where the stores and now the Montessori school really are the types of businesses that would benefit from having that shorter term parking. So right now it's the minimum is a half an hour, and so we'd be going down to 20 minutes. Is that how it works?
That would be correct.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
Are the businesses farther down the block aware that the change? The ones who, like the restaurants that will need longer term?
We did
Or
not.
has it changed too?
We did not survey the entire block, and typically when we make the changes, we basically look at the data of usage, and we don't really consult with the blocks. We look at the usage and the peak hours and the days of usage before deciding to make a change. And given the fact that the westernmost part of Davis is less parked than the eastern portion along Maple, there is plenty of parking near Oak, and there's definitely a lot more parking available west of Oak. And then there's also the 1500 block of Maple, which is just south of the Benison's Bakery, that is underutilized. And then we also have a parking lot for 24 spaces just behind the GGO's Pizzeria. So we wouldn't be diminishing, parking, any parking spaces. There's still a good parking stock available for 2-hour parking.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right, then I think we're ready for another roll call vote, please.
Okay, Alderman Nguyen,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
Alderman Ravel,
Aye.
and Alex.
Aye.
Okay, so this will move on to City Council for approval then.
Thank you.
So then this next item, I think, is more of a discussion item. This is the question about how to address the fact that we've got so many more delivery trucks just inundating our streets, and whether there's any kind of actions that we want to take about that. So I just once again start with Mr. Rivera to give us a little bit of background about this, and then we'll get the committee's input.
And Jessica, I believe this is Jessica's item.
What was it? Oh, it's Jessica's. I'm sorry, Jessica, please.
That's no problem.
Uh-huh.
So this item has actually been scheduled to be brought to the Transportation and Parking Committee before the pandemic happened, because there has been a trend in increased delivery truck vehicles over the last several years. Marcus, can you put up the memo, please? Thank you. And it's worldwide where the increases are happening. And when Amazon started taking over delivering its own packages, there was an increase with same-day delivery. There's many stores now that are offering same-day delivery, and there's just many more delivery vehicles on the road. And with the pandemic, that has only increase that for the people who can make the choice to choose delivery over going to a store. And so then these delivery vehicles have very real impacts. With more vehicles on the road, that has greater wear and tear on city infrastructure for our streets. And so delivery trucks are generally heavier than cars, and so that increases the wear and tear as well. There's effects on local economy, because when delivery costs are artificially low, that encourages people to make purchases online rather than perhaps from a local business. And so then that can have very real impacts on businesses within Evanston. When you have more vehicles on the road, of course, then you're talking about more greenhouse gas emissions associated with e-commerce. Marcos, could you scroll up, please? Or scroll down, I guess. Oops. And so then you're also, when you're talking about more vehicles on the road, there's safety concerns. These vehicles will often stop randomly in high traffic areas. And so you might see them on Ridge, for example. They stop in pedestrian crosswalks and bike lanes to complete deliveries. And then there's also just the congestion issues that relate to safety and greenhouse gas emissions and the wear and tear on the roads. And so staff identified different options that could be used to regulate delivery trucks. And so there's no policy that's being presented today, and there's no, this is just to get a conversation started to determine if there is an interest in looking at how the city may regulate these types of vehicles, and then looking at what other communities have already done. And so for the first item that staff identified with fees, so when we're looking at fees, this has mostly been done outside of the US so far, but this is coming to the US with congestion pricing fees that are happening in New York. So even though this is relatively new, it is happening. You might remember the city adopted a transportation network provider tax not too long ago. That was also on the more progressive, newer policies that the city adopted at that time. And so there is a precedent for the city to look at policies like this. Then there's also location, so requiring delivery trucks to use lockers. Many places already have lockers, like Walgreens will have lockers for deliveries. Whole Foods has lockers for deliveries. So there is a possibility of requiring that. Now, whether or not these businesses can accommodate the full scale of needs is another matter, but that is something that could be reviewed and determined by working with local businesses and also working with the delivery operators. Bundling is really helpful. So, for example, I had 3 delivery trucks visit my building in Evanston just for me on the same day this week, and so they were 3 different providers. And that's ridiculous. And if I could have had an option to get all of those bundled onto one truck, I absolutely would have. But these businesses are operating for their own, for what is most efficient for their costs, but not necessarily what is efficient as far as greenhouse gas emissions are concerned, or congestion or wear and tear on city streets. Then some locations have just restricted delivery trucks in city centers. So like, looking at downtown Evanston, for example, a lot of people like to look at awareness campaigns, and awareness campaigns are great for considering environmental impacts. However, I just want to make sure it's noted that there is a cost to awareness campaigns. And so without fees for the same program balanced with fees, or a dedicated stream of funding or a grant, it's hard to do an awareness campaign if there's not funding for it. And we are in a recession right now, and identifying funding is more difficult for things like awareness campaigns.
Well, on that front, we might be able to bring in, I thought, but I was like, Citizen an awareness campaign, or some of our other transportation groups.
I can barely hear Alderman Nguyen. I don't know if anyone else is having a problem of cutting in and out.
It's a little staticky, yeah.
I have to leave the meeting and come back. Sorry, Jessica. Can you hear me?
You're just very choppy.
You are as well.
I heard something about bringing in another group to help with an awareness campaign. I didn't catch what that group was.
I said Citizens Greener Evanston, or some of our environmental groups.
Yeah.
And I think all of these ideas are really exciting. I have seen those trucks on Ridge Avenue just stopped suddenly, and I definitely would support exploring the idea of taxing so that we can recoup some of the wear and tear on our streets, and also get them to start looking more efficiently at how they make deliveries. You know, I wish we could require them to be all electric vehicles.
And I think that's a great point, because part of the tax could incentivize the use of electric vehicles. And so if you are using an electric delivery truck, then you don't have to pay, for example, or you pay a lesser fee.
Right.
And then I also wanted to note that nearly every single vehicle using Evanston streets is paying a tax in some way or another right now. So if you live in Evanston, you have a wheel tax. If you come to visit Evanston, you're usually paying to park. If you are riding a transportation network provider vehicle, you're paying a tax. Heavy freight trucks that are using Evanston, they have a permit fee. And so it's really these delivery trucks that aren't oversized, that are really the only kind of vehicle that are not paying for the use of Evanston roads currently, and are causing a more significant wear and tear through their increased use.
Yeah, that's
Would this
an
tax
interesting
apply,
point.
would
Barbara?
this tax apply to postal service vehicles who are doing many of the deliveries now through UPS, and delivery is through the postal service?
That is a great question. I think we would need to get legal involved in that conversation. Part of it is it's a federal entity that's not a for-profit business. And how would that work? And so I don't know.
Well, if you're charging Amazon, which is the company that's sending the package, as opposed to charging the transportation company, then that's a way of recouping it to some extent, because Amazon is the one that uses the post office.
It's not just Amazon, it's anybody selling online.
Right.
Anybody, I've had deliveries from all sorts of different companies, have nothing to do with Amazon, that use UPS does their delivery normally, but they choose to do the SurePost at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that's a great point, and so I would definitely want to talk to legal about that. The one benefit with the USPS vehicles is that they are only making one stop per building, whereas when you're talking about FedEx or Amazon or USPS, UPS, they may have multiple vehicles stopping at the exact same building.
Right.
And so I think that that's part of the real issue too, is that they're not bundling their deliveries in the same way that USPS is.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't, we don't work with legal, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So are we aware of any other communities here in Illinois, for example, that are talking about doing something like this? Or are we going to be a pace setter here?
We would be a pace setter, and something that could be implemented could be a congestion tax. And so it could be for vehicles that are not already being taxed to pay a congestion tax during peak hours. And then that is being considered by the city of Chicago. Their congestion tax might encompass more vehicles than just delivery or freight vehicles, but that is a common way for taxing these types of vehicles right now.
Okay. Other thoughts, comments, etc.?
These are all great points that are brought up here, Jessica. These are great. I think that a campaign would be very important, and we don't know who would be the arm to the campaign and the funding. But I mean, all these points could then be addressed, and then we would have not only the delivery service, but also the public in trying to shape this so we could have less congestion and less pollution and more economic, local economic, progress. But yeah, I think it's a challenge to find then perhaps a method of taxing that then use that capital to use a very effective campaign to have our citizens,
I'm concerned somewhat about the. Are you done?
Sorry.
I'm concerned some about the timing while we're still in pandemic mode, because many choices are being made now that might be made differently if people were not as concerned about being out and about. It's certainly true for me, and I'm in the affected group.
Right.
Well, I have a feeling it would take, but I think it would probably take us several months to actually fine tune something enough to go to council. But I think delaying implementation until people are not relying on delivery so much because of the coronavirus would be good in terms of timing.
Yeah.
I think it has to be.
Barbara, go ahead.
It has to be at least phase 5 when there's a vaccine or a treatment.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we could start acting or trying to implement some measures to apply those costs to companies like it was mentioned, UPS and FedEx having several vehicles serving the same area.
Mm-hmm.
That could happen, I think, sooner than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think Barbara's point is that right now, when many people really can't go out and do their own shopping on their own as they normally would, that this is because they're staying at home, they're quarantining at home, that this it's going to be passed straight through to the consumer. So that actually is probably a burden. I'm sorry, am I breaking up again?
Go ahead.
Well, I think the problem is that, as Barbara's pointing out, is there are people who would be doing this on their own and being very efficient about it and wouldn't necessarily be ordering from Amazon if they could go out and purchase these items directly themselves. And so by adding the tax on, which would be passed through to the consumer, I imagine that this is actually adding sort of a insult to injury in some ways. But I actually agree with Alderman Revelle that this is going to take us a while to refine. I think that this is a great first start, the beginning discussion to have. And I think, Jessica, I'd like to know, I think we all want to hear more about, first, we have to check with legal and figure out, okay, what's legally appropriate to do, and also what's the most efficacious, like what's the best way, to do that. You might want to talk to a tax policy expert on this, and obviously looking to see who else has done this. I understand in New York are working on from the point of view of congestion. I think we're looking at this from a point of view of climate effects more than the congestion issue. But both issues are valid. So I'd like to just tell you, please continue to pursue this and continue to do research, because I think that every member of the council would be very interested in this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what.
I also,
Barbara, go ahead.
No, I think it's important to not necessarily demonize Amazon as the only player here.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly they're a big one, and for sure. But more and more companies are doing online shopping with deliveries. So we're in some ways fighting a cultural trend where more and more people are wanting everything. It's less community-based and more, I want it now. No solution to that, but that's something to be considered in terms of what behaviors we're really trying to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. but that as we emerge from the pandemic, trying to support our local businesses is going to be really important. So if, this, trying to do something about the delivery trucks will help. If it can encourage people to do more local shopping once they're able to get out, I think that would be really helpful too. So Jessica, I think basically the committee is really interested in seeing more detail and more examples of how this, all of those options that you lay out, how those all might work. And, I think we, at this point, are interested in all of them.
Great. I will take the next steps and meet with legal and start identifying what different types of policies can look like and identifying funding sources for things like awareness campaigns, because I do think that that is an important component. Barbara makes a good point about cultural shifts and how we encourage people to invest in the local economy by shopping local and choosing to bundle their deliveries whenever possible is a really important part of this as well.
Right. Yep. Yep. Okay. Then, and then Jessica, I think you're next as well for the next item on the transportation update.
Yes. So this is just some information that I wanted to share with you all to make sure that you're aware of it. PACE is moving forward with the Pulse Inkster line engineering design phases. This project has been in the works since I've been here, actually, and before that. And so it's kind of like a bus rapid transit line that would extend from O'Hare to downtown Evanston. There's already an existing line there. They will have specialized buses and signal timings and very, very nice bus shelters to facilitate movement between downtown Evanston and the airport. They've identified 2 locations for those bus stops in those bus stations in Evanston at the Evanston Plaza on one side of the street, and then the Burger King on the other side of the street. There will also be options to do community art in the bus shelters. There needs to be a certain transparency to it, but PACE is partnering with each community involved to have their own artwork on the shelters, which is a unique opportunity of this program as well. Then the next item, just FYI that the city has submitted 2 grants. One is the RTA Access to Transit Grant Program to look at converting from flag stops to ADA compliant bus stops. This is something we've been talking about for a while. How do we improve ADA access? And then also most of the bus stops, over half of the bus stops in Evanston are not ADA compliant right now. There's no concrete pad for somebody to stand. And so this would be a benefit not only to people who need to use a wheelchair or other assistive device, but people with strollers or people with shopping carts and things like that to get on the bus. So having that, this would really benefit a lot of people. Then the other grant that was submitted was to Smart Growth America's Arts and Transportation Rapid Response as part of COVID-19 response to look at having murals as part of some of the barriers that are going up for restaurants, and then potentially expanding active transportation facilities as well. These are both very highly competitive grants. There's no guarantee that we'll get either one of them, but just wanted to let you know about this work that's been ongoing. Next, with pedestrian work, in May, the city received the Walk Friendly Community designation for a Gold Walk Friendly Community. The city had previously received a Gold Walk Friendly, and this is a renewal of that Gold Walk Friendly Community Award.
Is that the highest go?
The highest is platinum. There's very few. There's I think maybe 2 cities in the US with there's not very many with platinum. And the decision was made to submit a renewal application this time around instead of submitting a full application to go for the platinum.
We'll keep it as a goal.
It is a goal, and I think that that's something that's going to continue happening, and that's why, as part of the work with the walk-friendly community program, staff's looking at missing sidewalk inventory and kind of what are the next steps to like finish up the sidewalks in Evanston, and how can that be identified? How can funding be identified for that? And then finally, the bike-friendly community application is also up this year and is due in August to the League of American Bicyclists. And staff have been preparing for that submission next month, intending to have public works staff also attend the Transportation and Parking Committee to give a 2014 bike plan update that relates to our BFC application as well. And so looking at the progress that we've made since our last update and what staff is working on in future to continue carrying out the bike plan update. And then lastly, People for Bikes recently released updated city rankings with scorecards for municipalities. If you want to check that out, I provided a link to that. The city of Evanston, for the people, this is not something that the city submits. This is something that People for Bikes do on their own. They have a survey process. They analyze the data on their own. Nobody submits anything. And City of Evanston's kind of middle of the road in their city rankings. It's actually, it seems lower, but it's kind of, we kind of fall in the middle of their rankings. It's a tough system. It's a very tough system. And something that I would note is that the city has been making progress. So since 2018, the city has increased its ranking slightly. So even though it might seem like it's a low ranking, we are making progress according to People for Bikes.
Good. That's good to hear.
Yeah, that is good. Yeah.
Jessica, I had a question about the bus stops. Are we looking to move bus stops like past the intersection, through the intersection, like in some busy areas? They've moved into other communities. They've moved the bus stops just past the traffic signal instead of having the bus at the stop signal.
Yeah, that's right. So that's called a far side stop. And that is the best place for a bus to stop is on the far side. That's another thing that has not been evaluated in the city of Evanston in some time. We still have a lot of near side stops for places that are actually signed with concrete pads. And that would include looking at moving far side stops in those locations where it makes sense to do so. And that helps speed up the bus system as well. I know that with COVID, there's concerns about people not using public transit as much. However, when you're talking about people who are using our public transit, a lot of times there's a need to, and that's not just an economic need. It could mean there are other mobility issues. It could also be an environmental choice to continue using public transit. And so while I expect public transit ridership to not be at previous levels, I expect it to continue moving forward, and having a bus system that is predictable with having actual stops, and then also that is efficient and quick is important as well. And so it's really critical that we start getting in these ADA compliant stops, and then also getting the stops to the far side to improve the flow of traffic.
The far side, you mean the across the intersection, or?
Right, exactly. So after the stoplight, like Michael was saying.
Yeah.
That it would be nice to in the future see that. I mean, as our town is getting a lot more denser with the residential component that we keep adding to the town, we have more people moving in and more people are a dual car family and things like that. So we have a lot more traffic through Evanston. Some streets, like when you're driving on Dodge Avenue, for instance, and you have the bus in front of you, and the bus pulls up at Dempster or Oakton or something to that effect, and sometimes it impedes the rest of the traffic that's trying to turn right because they're at the bus stop, and then, they're waiting for people to load and unload. So that would be interesting to see that in the future. It would certainly help the traffic flow on a lot of streets.
Good point. All right. Well, lots of good information for us to digest.
I have a question for Michael.
Mm-hmm.
With the pandemic, has the parking study that was going to be done been postponed until we return to somewhat normal behaviors?
Correct. We delayed it. So our intention is to have it start within, I believe, the next 90 days. And then they'll probably be completing it by the end of, sometime just shortly after the new year.
Well, it will be interesting to see if anything like normal returns in the next 90 days, because I can tell you that the parking near me, near the Central Street Metro stop, is not anywhere close to what normal used to be.
Agreed. What we've been noticing is that the stays are not, people are utilizing the parking, but obviously the stays are not as long as what they used to be, because people can't patronize the businesses as long as they could, and as long as they would actually want to patronize the business, right? With people being in it. So people are utilizing the parking. We're seeing the revenues ticking up slowly. So we're nowhere near, where we were prior to COVID, but the revenues are ticking up. So we see the usage, and there's plenty of availability. So the usage is becoming a lot more transient these days, probably an hour or less are the stays, as people pick up their goods and they pre-order and they're doing curbside and things like that. And during the COVID, we went ahead and we created some temporary 10-minute curbside pickup signs that we are working with a lot of the businesses that have transient business types, like the coffee shops and things like that. So we worked with them and the economic development team to install. It's like a vinyl sign that attaches either to the parking meter or something like that. And we've been allowing people to park there for free for the 10 minutes or less that they're picking up their items.
Michael, I'm really meaning the points where we have commuter residential conflicts. That behavior is dramatically different. People are not taking metro trains.
Understood.
Any of those places where we're looking for a study to give us some input on how we deal with those conflicts is not going to be anywhere close to normal for a while.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So this was one of the reasons why we looked to delay the study, because given the COVID and the behaviors that people are going to be experiencing after that, our numbers are going to be quite skewed on whatever survey they come back with.
So is there a possibility we could delay it even longer then, to allow time?
I think that may be a possibility. That's something that I can reach out to the vendor and see if we can delay that even a little longer if we need to.
Yeah.
I just think
because we made the award, but they have not started any of the work.
Right.
I'm concerned that we won't get something that we can really compare apples to apples if we, before people return to anywhere close to normal behavior.
Right.
Understood.
The difference on the commuting is enormous right now.
Dramatic.
Enormous.
Right.
And it's not going to change real fast. People are going to be continuing to work from home.
Agreed.
For much longer.
Agreed. And it's quite worrisome for us because we have a lot of office space in downtown Evanston, and a lot of companies are now seeing the results that they're getting from their employees while working remotely from home, and a lot of companies may not return to their offices, or they may be looking to liquidate the spaces that they're keep. So it's going to be interesting moving forward, definitely.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, and to provide some context in the data, at one point, Metro was down ridership by 97%.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
I can testify to that personally. I took a trip, a medical trip down to Chicago last week, I think. And I was worried about it. I didn't need to be. There was hardly anyone on the train. I didn't touch anything. And people wore masks, and it was easy to social distance, which was a good thing for my trip, not a good thing for Metra.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think given the fact that we're in summer and we've had really nice weather this month, people are, if they can stay off public transportation, walk, bike, skateboard, whatever, that's what they're going to do. But once we start getting into some rainy days and inclement cold weather, people are going to have to make some tough decisions for themselves.
Right. Well, please keep us updated in terms of our ability to, kind of postpone that, the start of that.
We'll definitely do that.
Okay, great. All right. Are there any other issues to come before this committee? Okay, then
There, I'd like to mention something to Jessica that she's probably thought about in the previous item, not the one we just spoke recently, about the deliveries and the congestion. And I just want to add, and thank you for doing so, laying out all this memo, and then I'd like you to think of ways that perhaps people who use alternatives, and try to find ways around it, that there might be some incentive, and that would be perhaps something that dovetails with the culture change, and just to have some way of incentive those who are doing so or who are considering doing so, and using different alternatives to having their packages arrive to their front step.
That's a great point.
Yep. Okay. Any other items to bring up before we adjourn? Then could we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second? And
Second.
a roll call, please.
All right, we'll start with Alderman Nguyen.
Oops, she's muted.
We lose Alderman Nguyen?
She's still there, but she's muted. How about
Okay.
come back to her?
All right, no problem. Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen?
I think we can assume that she would
Yeah, we can.
vote yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing you this time next month, I guess.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you.
Take care and
Okay.
be safe.
Bye. Nice to see you.
Okay. Yeah. Good night.